What if everything you've been chasing has actually been waiting for you to stop? Think about that for a second. You've been working hard, pushing, planning, trying to figure out why some things just don't seem to come, no matter how much effort you put in. And somewhere, quietly, you started to wonder if maybe the problem isn't what you're doing. Maybe it's something deeper, something you can't quite name. I know that feeling. That low hum of frustration underneath the surface of a life that looks almost right, but not quite. Here's what I've come to understand. After years of studying the men and women who built extraordinary lives from nothing, they didn't try harder than you. They didn't have better luck. They had a different frequency. And that frequency, once you understand how it works, doesn't just change what you attract. It changes who you are when you wake up in the morning. That's what we're going to talk about today. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years of his life interviewing the most successful people in America. Men who built industries. Men who turned ideas into empires. And when he sat down to write what he had learned, he didn't start with strategy. He didn't start with tactics or habits or morning routines. He started with the mind. Specifically, with what the mind transmits. Hill believed, and spent decades proving, that the human brain is both a broadcasting station and a receiving set. His words, not mine. He wrote that the brain has the capacity to pick up vibrations of thought being released by other brains. And more importantly, that the thoughts you hold most consistently, most emotionally, most deeply, are the ones that shape the reality you walk into every single day. Now, I know how that can sound, and I'm not asking you to take it on faith. I'm asking you to consider the evidence of your own life. Think about a time when everything seemed to flow, when the right people showed up at the right moment, when opportunities appeared almost without effort, when you felt not desperate, not anxious, but quietly certain that things were moving in your direction. What was different about you in that season? Not your circumstances, not your bank account, not your connections. You. Something inside you was operating at a different level, a different tone, a different signal. That's the frequency Hill was talking about. Not a metaphor, not a motivational phrase. A real, internal state that either draws your desires closer or quietly pushes them away. And here's the part that most people miss entirely. You're already broadcasting. Right now, every single day. The question has never been whether you have a frequency. The question is, what is yours actually saying? There's a version of you that you show the world. The one that gets up, goes through the motions, handles responsibilities, makes plans. The one that says the right things, sets the goals, reads the books, tries to stay positive. And then there's the version of you that runs underneath all of that. The one that whispers at 2 a.m. The one that tightens in your chest when you check your account balance. The one that flinches, just slightly, when someone else gets the thing you wanted. The one that smiles and says, I'm fine, while something deeper says, this isn't it yet. That version, the one underneath, is your real frequency. And here's the uncomfortable truth that Napoleon Hill understood better than almost anyone in his era. Your outer life is not a reflection of your intentions. It's a reflection of your dominant mental state. Not what you want, not what you say you believe, not what you write in your journal or repeat to yourself in the mirror. Your dominant mental state. The one you return to when no one is watching. The one that lives in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. Hill called it your mental attitude, and he was precise about it. He wrote that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, but the word people always skip over is believe. Not hope, not wish, not try, believe. And belief isn't a thought you think once. It's a frequency you hold. There's a difference between someone who wants wealth and someone who expects it. You can feel that difference in a room. You can hear it in the way they speak. Not in their words, in the space between their words, in the steadiness underneath them. One person is reaching for something far away. The other is simply aligned with what's already moving toward them. That alignment, that's what we're building toward. But before we can talk about how to build it, we have to talk about what's been quietly breaking it. Because for most people, the signal isn't weak. It's just pointed in the wrong direction. There's a concept Hill returned to again and again throughout his work. He called it the enemy within. Not failure, not bad luck, not the economy or the circumstances or the people who didn't believe in you. The real enemy, Hill said, was something far more intimate than any of those things. It was fear, and not the dramatic kind. Not the fear you feel standing at the edge of something obviously dangerous. The kind Hill was talking about is quieter than that, more patient, more precise in the damage it does. It's the fear that disguises itself as realism. The voice that says, "Be careful. Don't get your hopes up. You've tried this before. People like us don't really get to have that." It sounds reasonable. It sounds responsible. It sounds, sometimes, like wisdom. But what it's actually doing is sending a signal. Every time that voice speaks, and you listen, really listen, the way you listen to something you believe, you're broadcasting a frequency. And that frequency doesn't say, "I am ready to receive." It says something much older, much more primal. It says, "I don't trust this. I don't trust myself. I don't trust life to deliver what I need." And life, in Hill's framework, in the framework of every serious thinker who has studied the mechanics of success, responds to that signal with perfect accuracy. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because your dominant frequency is, quite literally, tuning you out of the channels where your desires actually exist. Think of it like a radio. If you want to hear a station broadcasting at 98.6, you don't tune to 91.2 and hope for the best. You don't try harder on the wrong frequency. You adjust. You find the exact signal. And when you do, suddenly, clearly, without effort, the transmission comes through. Your desires are broadcasting right now. Wealth, fulfillment, the relationships you want, the life that feels like yours, it's all transmitting. Constantly. Without interruption. The question is whether your internal dial is set close enough to receive it. And most people, without realizing it, are spending their entire lives 1 or 2 degrees off. Not because they're broken, not because they're undeserving, but because no one ever showed them how to tune. Hill understood this. He didn't just write about positive thinking as a feel-good concept. He wrote about it as a mechanical process, a discipline, a daily practice of mental management that, over time, restructures the signal you send out into the world. He watched men come from nothing, from genuine poverty, from loss, from circumstances that would have crushed most people, and build lives that seemed almost impossible from the outside. And the one thing they all had in common wasn't talent. It wasn't timing. It was the frequency they refused to abandon, even when everything around them said they should. That refusal, that quiet, stubborn insistence on staying tuned to what they wanted rather than what they feared, that was the foundation of everything. Now I want to pause here for just a moment. Because if what I'm saying is landing for you, if somewhere in your chest something is recognizing this, not just hearing it, but actually recognizing it, I want you to do something simple. Go to the comments right now and write the word frequency. Not because it's a ritual, not because it will magically change something, but because the act of choosing that word, in this moment, is itself a signal. It's you telling yourself, and the world, that you are no longer willing to broadcast doubt by default. The people who write that word today are the ones who, a year from now, will look back at this moment as the day something shifted. Write it, and then keep watching. Because what comes next is where the real work begins. Napoleon Hill didn't believe in luck. Not the way most people use that word. Not the kind that falls from the sky and lands on certain people for no reason. He studied luck, if you can call it that, for 20 years. He sat across from Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Charles Schwab. Men who had built things that had never been built before. And he asked them, in different ways, the same essential question. Why you? And what came back, consistently, wasn't what he expected. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't education. Several of the most successful men Hill interviewed had almost no formal schooling. It wasn't family money. It wasn't being in the right place at the right time. It was something Hill eventually called definiteness of purpose. And I want you to sit with that phrase for a moment, because it's easy to read it and move past it as if you already understand it. You probably don't. Most people don't. Definiteness of purpose is not a goal. It's not a vision board. It's not a 5-year plan. It's not a number you write down in a notebook and revisit on Sunday mornings. It's a state of mind so clear, so specific, so deeply held that it begins to reorganize everything around it. Hill described it as the starting point of all achievement. Not one of the starting points. The starting point. Because here's what definiteness of purpose actually does inside you. It eliminates the static. Think about what happens to most people's minds on any given day. Dozens of half-formed desires pulling in different directions. The wish for more money competing with the fear of failure. The dream of freedom competing with the comfort of routine. The desire for something better competing with the quiet belief that better might not actually be available to you. All of that conflict, all of that inner noise, is being broadcast, and a fragmented signal produces fragmented results. Hill watched this pattern destroy more potential than poverty ever did. Men and women with genuine ability, genuine desire, genuine intelligence, scattered across too many frequencies, too many half-commitments, too many almost beliefs. And then he watched what happened when someone chose. Really chose. Not tentatively. Not with one foot still in the old story. But with the full weight of their attention, their emotion, their daily thought, committed to a single direction. Something changed in those people. Not overnight. Not dramatically at first. But steadily. The way a river changes the shape of a canyon. Slowly. Then all at once. The right people started appearing. Opportunities that had always existed suddenly became visible. Doors that had always been there revealed themselves as unlocked. Hill called this the law of attraction before that phrase became a cultural shortcut stripped of its real meaning. He meant something precise by it. He meant that a mind operating with clarity and emotional conviction begins to function like a magnet, not metaphorically, but functionally. It starts to draw toward itself the people, resources, and circumstances that are in alignment with its dominant frequency. But here's the part that takes time to truly understand. The magnet doesn't work because you want something badly enough. Wanting badly is actually one of the most common ways people accidentally repel what they're after. The magnet works because of what you become in the process of holding your purpose. There's a version of you that exists on the other side of this practice. A version that doesn't chase, doesn't grasp, doesn't broadcast desperation or doubt or the low hum of quiet defeat. A version that simply knows. And that knowing, that settled, unshakable internal certainty, is the most magnetic force a human being can develop. Hill saw it in every person he studied who had built something real. Not arrogance. Not blind optimism. Something quieter and far more powerful than either of those things. A frequency so clear, so consistent, so deeply rooted in who they had decided to become, that the world had no choice but to respond. And the question that's probably forming somewhere in the back of your mind right now, the one you haven't quite put into words yet, is the exact question we need to answer next. There's something Hill wrote that most people read once and never fully recover from. He said that thought, combined with emotion, becomes a magnetic force. Not thought alone, thought combined with emotion. And that distinction, that specific, precise distinction, is the difference between someone who understands the law of attraction intellectually and someone who actually lives it. Because here's what most people do. They think about what they want. They visualize it. They write it down. They repeat affirmations. They do all the things they've been told to do. And then they wonder why nothing seems to move. Why the same patterns keep showing up. Why the gap between where they are and where they want to be feels, if anything, wider than before. And the answer, almost every single time, is this. They're thinking without feeling. Hill was unambiguous about this. He wrote that the subconscious mind responds not to thoughts, but to thoughts that carry emotional charge. The deeper parts of your mind, the parts that actually govern your behavior, your perception, your automatic responses to the world. Those parts don't speak the language of logic. They speak the language of feeling, which means that a thought you think coldly, mechanically, without genuine emotional investment, barely registers. But a thought you feel deeply, a thought connected to real desire, real conviction, real emotional weight, that thought penetrates. It goes past the surface layer of conscious intention and embeds itself in the architecture of who you are. Hill identified specific emotions he considered the most powerful carriers of this frequency. And at the top of that list, above all others, was faith. Not religious faith, necessarily, though for some people it takes that form. The kind of faith Hill was describing is more specific than that. It's the emotion of certainty about something that hasn't happened yet. The feeling, not the thought, the feeling that what you want is not only possible, but inevitable, that it is already set in motion, that the distance between you and it is simply a matter of time and continued alignment. That feeling, held consistently, is what transforms a wish into a magnetic frequency. And I want to be honest with you here, because this is where most people hit a wall. Generating that feeling, that genuine, embodied sense of certainty, is not easy when your current circumstances are telling a different story. When the bank account says one thing, when the relationships say another, when the mirror of your daily life is reflecting back something far smaller than what you know you're capable of. How do you feel certain about something you haven't seen yet? How do you generate faith when the evidence seems to be pointing the other way? Hill's answer was both simpler and more demanding than most people expect. He said you practice it, not as performance, not as pretending, but as deliberate, repeated, disciplined emotional rehearsal. Every single day, in the quiet moments, in the space between tasks, in the minutes before sleep and the minutes after waking, you return to the feeling of already having what you desire, not wishing for it, not hoping for it, feeling it is real, feeling it is present, feeling it as yours. He watched men do this in circumstances that would have broken most people. Men who had lost everything and were rebuilding from nothing. Men who held on to a feeling, a specific, vivid, emotionally charged feeling of their desired outcome, through months and sometimes years of outward evidence that contradicted it completely. And then, almost without exception, the tide turned. Not because they got lucky, but because they never stopped transmitting. There's a word Hill used for this practice, a word that gets misunderstood almost every time it's pulled out of context. And understanding what he actually meant by it is what separates the people who talk about changing their lives from the people who actually do it. The word is autosuggestion. Hill dedicated an entire chapter to it in Think and Grow Rich. And when most people encounter it, they skim past it. They assume they know what it means. They picture someone standing in front of a mirror repeating phrases they don't believe, feeling slightly ridiculous, waiting for something to change. That's not what Hill was describing. Not even close. Autosuggestion, in Hill's framework, is not about the words. It's about the channel. He was precise about this. He wrote that the subconscious mind can be voluntarily directed through the principle of autosuggestion, but only when the communication is charged with emotion. Without emotion, he said, the words are like seeds dropped on concrete. They land. They sit. Nothing grows. But with emotion, with genuine, deeply felt emotional investment in what you're saying, those same words become something entirely different. They become instructions. Instructions delivered directly to the part of your mind that operates below conscious awareness. The part that governs your instincts, your intuitions, your automatic responses. The part that, once programmed with a clear and emotionally charged directive, begins to quietly reorganize your perception of reality to match it. This is not mysticism. This is how the mind actually works. Think about the beliefs you carry right now that you didn't consciously choose. The ones about money, about what's possible for someone like you, about whether you deserve the things you want, about how hard life has to be before it gets easier. You didn't sit down one day and decide to believe those things. They were installed through repetition and emotion. Someone said something to you when you were young, and it landed with feeling, so it stayed. You experienced something that carried enough emotional weight, and your mind filed it away as truth. Over time, through repeated exposure and emotional reinforcement, certain beliefs became the background frequency of your life. The operating system you didn't know you were running. Hill's insight, and it was genuinely radical for his time, was that this same process could be done deliberately, that you could, with consistent practice, use the exact mechanism that installed your limiting beliefs to install something different in their place. Not by forcing it, not by white-knuckling your way to positivity, but by understanding how the channel works and learning to use it with intention. The practice he described is deceptively simple. You choose a clear, specific statement of your desired outcome. Not vague, not general, specific. You connect it to a feeling, not a manufactured feeling, but a real one. The genuine emotional resonance of what it would mean to you to actually have what you want. And then you return to it, daily, consistently. In the moments when your mind is most receptive, the threshold between waking and sleeping, when the conscious guard is lowered and the deeper layers of mind are accessible. You speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you completely believe in. Because that's what you're doing. You're convincing the deepest part of yourself that what you want is real, is possible, is already in motion. Hill watched this work in ways that seemed almost impossible from the outside. Men who had internalized poverty as identity, slowly, through this practice, began to move and think and make decisions like men who expected wealth. And then, not magically, but mechanically, wealth began to find them. Because they had finally stopped broadcasting the old signal. They had tuned, deliberately and repeatedly, to something new. But there's a piece of this that Hill considered even more important than the practice itself. A force he called the most powerful force in human experience. Something that, when combined with auto-suggestion and definiteness of purpose, creates a frequency so strong that it doesn't just attract what you want. It makes what you want inevitable. Hill called it the mastermind. And before you move past that phrase, I want you to understand what he actually meant by it, because it's one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of his work. Most people hear mastermind and think of a networking group, a business meeting, a circle of ambitious people sharing strategies and holding each other accountable. That's the surface. Hill was describing something that operates at a completely different level. He defined the mastermind as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people who work toward a definite purpose in a spirit of harmony. Every word in that definition matters. Not just coordination, not just knowledge, not just effort. Harmony. Hill believed, and documented with enough evidence to fill volumes, that when two or more minds come together in genuine alignment, in true harmony of purpose and emotion, something is created that didn't exist before. A third mind. Not a metaphor. Not a poetic way of saying teamwork works. A literally new frequency. A combined intelligence that exceeds the sum of its individual parts. He watched this phenomenon produce results that neither person could have generated alone. Ideas that appeared from nowhere. Solutions that neither mind had consciously constructed. Opportunities that seemed to materialize from the simple fact of two people being genuinely, deeply aligned in their purpose and their belief. Carnegie told Hill that this principle, the mastermind, was the single most important factor behind everything he had built. Not capital, not strategy, not timing. The frequency created between aligned minds. And Hill spent years trying to understand why. His conclusion was both simple and profound. The human mind, operating alone, has limits. Limits imposed by its own history, its own fears, its own blind spots. The signal it broadcasts is shaped, and sometimes distorted, by everything it has ever experienced, every belief it has ever absorbed, every wound it has ever carried. But when a mind comes into genuine harmony with another mind, a mind that holds a complementary frequency, that believes in the same direction, that carries emotional conviction about the same outcome. Something in both minds expands. The static clears. The signal strengthens. And the combined frequency they broadcast together begins to attract at a level that neither could reach independently. Hill saw this as the reason why the people who build extraordinary lives almost never do it entirely alone. Not because they need help in the practical sense, but because the frequency required to manifest at the highest level is almost impossible to sustain in isolation. We are not designed for that. The mind that spends too long alone with its own doubts, its own fears, its own unexamined beliefs, eventually starts to drift back toward its baseline frequency. No matter how disciplined you are, no matter how committed, the pull of the old signal is strong, familiar, comfortable in a way that limitation always is. But introduce a second mind, a mind operating at genuine clarity and conviction, and something remarkable happens. Your own frequency stabilizes. Not because the other person tells you what to do, not because they motivate you or hold you accountable in the conventional sense, but because the combined field you create together is stronger than either of your doubts. Hill documented case after case of people whose trajectories changed, not when they found a new strategy, not when their circumstances improved, but when they found the right mind to align with. A partner, a mentor, a collaborator, someone whose belief in the direction was as real and as deep as their own. And the moment that alignment clicked into place, things that had been stuck for years began to move. Not gradually, not incrementally, all at once, as if the universe had simply been waiting for the signal to become strong enough to act on. There's a reason Hill considered this the most powerful principle in his entire body of work. And there's a reason why so few people actually apply it. Because finding genuine harmony, real alignment, not surface agreement, requires something most people are not prepared to offer. Something that costs more than money, more than time, more than effort. Something Hill considered the ultimate prerequisite for everything else we've talked about. And without it, even the clearest purpose, even the most disciplined autosuggestion, even the strongest desire, remains just out of reach. Hill called it organized planning. But that's not what I want to talk about right now. Because before the plan, before the strategy, before the structure, before any of the practical architecture of a life well built, there is something Hill considered the true price of admission. He called it specialized knowledge combined with personal initiative. But underneath that, woven through every chapter of his work, present in every story he told about every person he studied, was something more fundamental than either of those things. It was the willingness to be uncomfortable in the direction of your desire. Not reckless, not chaotic, not the kind of discomfort that comes from poor decisions made in desperation. The specific, chosen discomfort of someone who has decided that where they are going matters more than how safe it feels to stay where they are. Hill watched men pay this price in ways that were genuinely difficult to witness. Thomas Edison failed more than 10,000 times before the light bulb worked. Not 10 times, not 100. 10,000 documented attempts that produced nothing but information and the choice to continue. Hill asked him once about those failures. Edison looked at him and said something that Hill never forgot. He said he hadn't failed 10,000 times. He had successfully discovered 10,000 ways that didn't work. That reframe, that specific, deliberate shift in how a man interpreted his own experience, was not accidental. It was a trained frequency. Edison had learned, through years of practice, to process setback as data rather than verdict, to hear the signal in what looked like silence, to stay tuned to the outcome while remaining completely unattached to the path. And that capacity, that trained, disciplined refusal to let circumstances define the signal, was worth more than any single invention he ever produced, because it meant he could never be permanently stopped. Hill saw this pattern everywhere. The men who built things that lasted weren't the ones who never fell. They were the ones who had trained their frequency to remain stable under pressure. who had learned, not through theory, but through repeated practice, that the gap between where they were and where they wanted to be was not evidence of failure. It was simply part of the process. And here's what that training actually looks like in a life. It looks like staying committed to your vision on the days when nothing in your external reality confirms it. It looks like returning to your frequency, deliberately, consciously, without drama, when fear or doubt or circumstance pulls you temporarily off course. It looks like treating every obstacle not as a stop sign, but as a course correction, information, redirection, the universe's way of showing you a better path to the same destination. Hill wrote that every adversity carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. He didn't write that as comfort. He wrote it as observation, because he had watched it happen too many times to dismiss it as coincidence. The man who loses the job and builds the company. The woman who ends the relationship and finds herself. The person who hits the bottom and discovers, for the first time, exactly how much they are capable of. The adversity doesn't create the benefit. The frequency does. The person who holds their signal steady through the difficulty, who refuses to let the temporary condition become the permanent broadcast. That person emerges from the other side of the obstacle not just intact, but fundamentally stronger, more magnetic, more aligned, more capable of attracting at a level they couldn't access before the difficulty arrived. Because the difficulty, it turns out, was never the enemy. It was the tuning, the precise, necessary pressure that forced the signal to clarify, that forced you to decide, really decide, whether you believed in your direction enough to keep broadcasting when nothing around you confirmed it. And the ones who passed that test, the ones who stayed tuned when every logical reason said to change the channel, those are the ones Hill wrote about. Those are the ones who built things that lasted. Those are the ones who look back, years later, at the moment they almost gave up, and understand, finally, what it was actually teaching them. But there's one more element. One more piece of the architecture that Hill considered non-negotiable. Something so specific, so precise in its function, that without it, everything else we've discussed remains theoretical. A concept so powerful that Hill said it was the only thing standing between the life you have and the life you are fully capable of living. Hill called it the burning desire. Not a wish, not a preference, not even a strong want. A burning desire. And the word burning was not chosen casually. Hill was describing a specific internal state, one that most people have never actually experienced in relation to what they say they want. One that, once you feel it, really feel it, you understand immediately why every other kind of wanting falls short. A burning desire is not something you talk yourself into. It's something that talks to you. It shows up before you're fully awake in the morning. It's still there when everything else has gone quiet at night. It doesn't require motivation because it is the motivation. It doesn't need to be remembered because it never fully leaves. Hill documented this quality in every single person he studied who had built something real. Without exception, Carnegie had it. Ford had it. Edison had it. The men who came from nothing and built everything. Every single one of them carried this specific quality of desire that was less like wanting something and more like being called by it. And here's what that distinction actually means in practice. Most people want things the way they want a comfortable afternoon. Pleasantly, without urgency, in a way that's easy to set aside when something more immediate demands attention. And then they wonder why their results feel comfortable and pleasant and easily set aside. The burning desire Hill was describing operates at a completely different frequency. It's the difference between a candle and a forge. Both produce heat. Both produce light. But only one of them is capable of changing the shape of something hard. And the life you want, the real version, not the edited version you've learned to be comfortable asking for, requires the forge. It requires a quality of desire so concentrated, so specific, so emotionally alive, that it begins to function as its own guidance system. Hill watched this happen in ways that were almost difficult to explain rationally. Men with burning desires seemed to operate with an intelligence that exceeded their conscious knowledge. They made decisions that shouldn't have worked and worked. They walked into rooms and created opportunities from nothing. They attracted resources and relationships that, from the outside, seemed improbable. But from the inside, from the frequency they were operating at, it felt inevitable. Because when desire reaches that level of intensity and clarity, it stops being something you carry. It becomes something that carries you. Now, I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to actually answer it. Not the answer that sounds good. The real one. What do you want? Not what you think is realistic. Not what you've been told to expect. Not the trimmed down, sensible version you've made peace with because the original felt too big to say out loud. What do you actually want? Because here's what Hill understood that most people spend their entire lives missing. The size of your desire is not the problem. The clarity of it is. Most people have large, vague wants. More money, more freedom, more happiness. And those wants, because they lack specificity, lack the emotional charge that makes them magnetic. Their wishes, fog, signal without frequency. Hill was obsessed with specificity for this reason. He didn't just tell his students to desire wealth. He told them to name the exact amount, to set the exact date, to define the exact value they would provide in exchange for it, to make the desire so specific, so concrete, so vivid, that the mind had no choice but to treat it as real. Because a mind that treats something as real begins to act as if it's real. And a mind that acts as if something is real begins to make decisions that create it. Not through magic. Through the quiet, daily, compounding effect of a frequency held with precision and emotional conviction over time. Hill watched ordinary men become extraordinary not because something extraordinary happened to them, but because they decided, with the full weight of their burning desire, exactly what they were moving toward. And then they never stopped moving. There's a question that naturally follows everything we've covered so far. A practical question, the kind that separates understanding from application. Because knowing all of this is one thing, but there's a specific moment, a specific internal shift that has to happen before any of it actually begins to work in your life. A moment Hill described as the point of no return. And what happens in that moment is something most people are never told about. There's a moment Hill wrote about that doesn't get nearly enough attention. He described it quietly, almost in passing, in a way that made it easy to miss if you were reading too fast. He called it the moment of decision, not the moment of planning, not the moment of commitment, not the moment when you finally feel ready or confident or certain enough to begin. The moment of decision. And the distinction Hill was drawing, the precise, critical distinction, is that real decisions and the feelings we associate with decisions are almost never the same thing. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait until the fear subsides, until the circumstances improve, until the timing feels right, until enough evidence has accumulated that the path forward seems safe enough to step onto without risking too much. And Hill's observation, backed by 2 decades of studying the people who actually built extraordinary lives, was that moment almost never comes. Not because the fear goes away, not because the circumstances align themselves conveniently, not because the timing becomes obvious, but because readiness, in the way most people imagine it, is not a feeling that precedes action. It's a feeling that follows it. The men Hill studied didn't step forward because they felt ready. They stepped forward and then felt ready. That sequence, that specific inversion of how most people think change works, is everything. Because what happens in the moment of real decision is not a feeling of confidence. It's a severing, a quiet, internal severing from the version of yourself that was still negotiating, still keeping one foot in the old story, still leaving open the possibility of retreat if things got difficult enough. Hill called this burning your bridges, not as a metaphor for recklessness, as a description of what genuine commitment actually feels like from the inside. When you burn the bridge behind you, when you make the decision that removes the option of going back, something fundamental changes in your frequency. the negotiation stops. The part of your mind that was spending enormous amounts of energy managing the gap between where you were and where you wanted to be, that part finally gets a clear directive. Forward. Only forward. And the energy that was being consumed by the negotiation, by the constant, exhausting management of doubt and possibility and retreat, that energy becomes available for something else. For movement. For clarity. For the kind of focused, magnetic action that Hill described as the natural state of a mind operating with definiteness of purpose. Hill watched men transform at the moment of decision in ways that seemed almost physical. The posture changed. The voice changed. The quality of attention changed. The way they entered rooms, the way they spoke, the way they moved through the world, all of it shifted. Not because their circumstances had changed, because their frequency had. They had stopped broadcasting the signal of someone who was considering a direction, and started broadcasting the signal of someone who had chosen one. And the world, the people in it, the opportunities in it, the resources in it, responds to those two signals completely differently. Consider a person you've known in your life who had that quality. Someone who had decided, really decided, not about something small, about the direction of their life, about who they were going to become. You could feel it, couldn't you? Not because they told you about it, not because they performed it, but because it came off them in a way that was almost tangible. A steadiness, a clarity, a kind of quiet certainty that didn't need to announce itself. That quality, that specific, felt quality, is what a committed frequency feels like from the outside. And it is magnetic in a way that almost nothing else is. Because people are drawn to certainty, not arrogance, not aggression, not the performed confidence of someone trying to convince you of something. The real thing, the settled, embodied, unshakable certainty of someone who has made their decision and is simply living it. Hill saw this quality as the single, most visible external marker of someone operating at a magnetic frequency. You didn't need to know their story. You didn't need to see their bank account or their resume or their track record. You could simply feel that something in them had been resolved. And that resolution, that internal settlement, was what made everything else possible. But there's a question that follows this. A question Hill wrestled with. A question every honest person who studies this material eventually has to face. What do you do when the decision has been made? When the bridge has been burned? And the thing you decided towards still hasn't arrived? What do you do in the space between the commitment and the manifestation? In the gap, where doubt lives, where the old frequency tries to reclaim its territory, where everything you've built can either hold or quietly collapse. Hill had a name for the gap. He didn't call it waiting. He didn't call it patience, in the passive sense that word usually implies. He called it persistence. And he wrote about it with more urgency than almost any other principle in his work, because he had watched persistence, or the lack of it, determine the outcome of more lives than any other single factor, more than intelligence, more than opportunity, more than talent or timing or circumstance. Persistence, the quiet, unglamorous, daily decision to keep moving in the direction of your desire when nothing in your immediate reality confirms that moving is working. Hill was unambiguous about this. He wrote that there may be no heroic quality more essential to success than persistence, that it was the direct result of habit, that it could be cultivated deliberately, like a muscle, through repeated practice, and that without it, every other principle he had ever taught was ultimately incomplete. Because here's the truth about the gap that most people are never told. The gap is not a sign that something has gone wrong. The gap is where the frequency is tested, and the testing is not incidental to the process. It is the process. Think about what actually happens in the gap. The decision has been made. The bridge has been burned. The desire is clear and specific and emotionally charged. The signal is strong. And then, nothing, or worse than nothing. Evidence that contradicts. Circumstances that push back. The quiet accumulation of days where the outer world seems entirely indifferent to the inner commitment you've made. This is the moment Hill wrote about more carefully than any other. Because this is the moment that separates the people who build extraordinary lives from the people who spend their lives wondering why they didn't. Not the moment of inspiration, not the moment of decision. This moment, the ordinary Tuesday when nothing is confirming your direction and the old frequency is right there, familiar and available, whispering that maybe you were wrong. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe the sensible thing, the realistic thing, is to adjust your expectations back to something more manageable. Hill called this the point at which most people quit. And he said it was almost always just before the breakthrough. Not as a comforting thought, as an observation. He had watched it happen too many times. The person who quit 3 months before the business turned. The person who walked away from the relationship 2 weeks before it would have deepened into something real. The person who stopped believing in their direction just as the universe was in the process of responding to it. They couldn't see it from where they were standing, but Hill could see it from the outside. And what he saw, every single time, was that the gap is not empty. The gap is full of movement that hasn't yet become visible, full of connections forming beneath the surface, full of the quiet, invisible work of a frequency that has been held long enough to begin reorganizing the world around it. The seed doesn't look like a tree. The decision doesn't look like the outcome. The gap doesn't look like progress, but it is. And the people who understand this, who have internalized it not just as a concept, but as a lived conviction, are the ones who can stay in the gap without being consumed by it, who can persist without rigidity, move without grasping, hold the frequency without clenching it. That quality, that specific, practiced capacity to remain steady in the gap, is what Hill considered the final test of magnetic frequency. Because anyone can broadcast clearly when everything is confirming their direction. The real transmission happens when nothing is. When you choose, in the silence, to keep the signal alive. When you return, again and again and again, to the feeling of your desire as real, as present, as already in motion beneath the surface of what you can currently see. Hill wrote that persistence is to a person what carbon is to steel. It doesn't change the shape of the material. It changes what the material is made of. And a mind made of persistence. A mind that has learned to stay tuned through the gap, through the silence, through the days when nothing confirms and everything doubts. That mind is not just more likely to succeed. It operates at a fundamentally different frequency than the mind that hasn't been through that fire. More magnetic, more clear, more capable of attracting at a level that would have been impossible before the gap tested it. And here's what I want to leave you with before we move into what comes next. The gap you're in right now, whatever it looks like, whatever it feels like, however long it has lasted, is not evidence that your frequency isn't working. It may be the most precise evidence that it is. Because the gap only exists between the decision and the arrival. And you only experience the gap if you've actually decided, which means the gap itself is proof that something real is already in motion. You just can't see it yet. But there's one final thing, one element we haven't discussed, yet that Hill considered the invisible thread running through everything. The thing that, when you finally understand it completely, makes everything else not just possible, but permanent. Hill wrote about it in different ways throughout his work. Sometimes he called it faith. Sometimes he called it the subconscious mind. Sometimes he described it through the stories of the men he studied, the quiet, almost invisible quality that seemed to run beneath everything they did, connecting their decisions to their outcomes in ways that looked, from the outside, like luck. But it wasn't luck. It was coherence. And coherence, true, deep, internal coherence, is the invisible thread Hill kept returning to because it is the thing that holds everything else together. Let me explain what I mean. Everything we've talked about in this conversation, definiteness of purpose, burning desire, auto-suggestion, the mastermind, persistence in the gap, each of these is powerful on its own. But they are not independent forces. They are parts of a single system. And like any system, the power is not in the individual components. It's in how completely they align. A mind that has definiteness of purpose but no emotional charge, incomplete. A mind with burning desire but no persistence through the gap, incomplete. A mind with disciplined autosuggestion but no genuine belief underneath the words, incomplete. Coherence is what happens when all of these elements are not just present but integrated. When they stop being practices you do and start being expressions of who you are. When the gap between your conscious intention and your subconscious broadcast finally closes. Hill described this state with unusual precision. He said that when a person reaches the point where their conscious mind and their subconscious mind are in complete agreement about a desired outcome, when there is no longer any internal contradiction, any hidden doubt, any residual belief pulling in the opposite direction, the attraction becomes automatic, not effortful, not maintained through discipline alone. Automatic. The way breathing is automatic. The way your heart rate adjusts without your instruction. The way your eyes focus without you deciding to focus them. The frequency becomes your natural state rather than something you have to work to sustain. And from that state, things move differently. Not because the world has changed, because you have. The person operating from genuine internal coherence doesn't experience attraction as something they're doing. They experience it as something they are. And that shift, from doing to being, is the deepest transformation Hill was pointing toward in everything he wrote. It's the difference between someone who practices being magnetic and someone who simply is. Now, I want to be honest about something. Reaching that level of coherence is not a weekend project. It's not a technique you apply once and then move on from. It's a direction, a practice, a daily return to alignment that, over time, becomes less effortful and more natural, until one day you realize that the frequency you used to work so hard to maintain is simply how you think now, how you feel now, who you are now. Hill watched this transformation happen in people across every background, every circumstance, every level of education and resource. The common thread was never where they started. It was how long they were willing to stay committed to the direction of their own coherence. And I'll tell you something that Hill observed, but rarely stated directly. The people who reached that level of internal coherence, the ones who finally closed the gap between what they consciously wanted and what they subconsciously believed, almost always described the moment not as an arrival, but as a recognition, as if the life they had been working toward had always been there, waiting patiently for the frequency to finally match it, for the signal to become clear enough, for the person sending it to finally become fully themselves. That's what this work is really about. Not just wealth, not just success in the conventional sense. The becoming, the slow, deliberate, sometimes difficult process of closing every gap between who you are and who you know you're capable of being, between what you broadcast and what you actually believe, between the life you're living and the life that has been waiting for your frequency to find it. If you've stayed with me until this point in the video, it's because you're committed to creating a life of abundance and success. That's why I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Every video here is designed to help you develop the mindset that attracts wealth, prosperity, and new opportunities every single day. There's something I want you to notice. Not think about. Notice. Right now, in this moment, after everything we've walked through together, something in you is different than it was when you pressed play. Not dramatically, not in a way that announces itself, but something has shifted, quietly. The way light shifts in a room when a cloud moves and you don't notice until the shadow is already gone. That shift is real, and it matters more than you might think. Because here's what Hill understood about the human mind that most people spend their entire lives missing. Transformation doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or ceremony or the dramatic before and after moment that makes for a good story. It arrives the way dawn arrives. So gradually that you can't point to the exact moment when darkness became light. And then, suddenly, it's day. What we've covered in this conversation is not a collection of ideas. It's a map that Napoleon Hill spent 20 years drawing, not from imagination, but from observation. From sitting across from the men who had actually made the journey, who had started where you are and arrived somewhere that, from the outside, looked like luck or talent or timing, but from the inside, felt like frequency, felt like the slow, deliberate, sometimes painful process of becoming coherent, of closing the gap between the person they were broadcasting as and the person they actually were. Hill's great insight, the one that runs like a river beneath everything he ever wrote, was not that success is available to a special few. It was that success is the natural result of a specific kind of mind. A mind that has learned to hold its frequency steady. A mind that has decided, really decided, what it's moving toward. A mind that treats its own desire not as a wish to be hoped for, but as a signal to be transmitted. Consistently, clearly, without apology and without retreat. And here's what I want to leave you with. Not as a lesson, not as a conclusion, just as something to carry. The frequency you've been building toward your entire life. The one that feels, when you get quiet enough, like the truest version of yourself, was never something you needed to create from scratch. It was always there, underneath the fear, underneath the doubt, underneath the accumulated weight of every time you were told to be realistic, to lower your expectations, to want something smaller and safer and more appropriate to your circumstances. Underneath all of that, the signal was always transmitting, waiting for you to stop drowning it out, waiting for you to get quiet enough to hear it, waiting for you to have the courage, not the confidence, the courage to tune to it deliberately and stay there, through the gap, through the silence, through the days when nothing confirms it and everything doubts it. To stay there, because the life that is coherent with your deepest frequency is not somewhere far away, waiting to be earned. It is the natural consequence of a mind that has finally learned to stop fighting itself. Hill spent 20 years studying the men who built empires. And what he found, at the center of every story, was not a strategy. It was a person who had gotten quiet enough to hear their own signal, and then had the patience and the persistence and the faith to keep transmitting it, until the world had no choice but to respond. You already have the frequency. You always did. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you're willing to hold it. If this video reached something in you, share it with 5 people who are ready to hear it. And if you haven't followed the channel yet, now is the time. Every video here exists for one reason: to help you become the person your desires have been waiting for.